Welcome back to Dune Hippie Machine. We are here for another episode, of course, about I-beams. I have just started working on the next set of I-beams that I'm building here. This will be the start of the fourth set. This right here is the third set that I built. This fourth set is for this F-150 here. Just getting going on them and kind of want to touch on a product I have. You can actually go to dunehippiemachine.com and find these on there for purchase. They are available. These are my uniball heat seat slungs. As you see, that drops right out of there after I've welded that all up, making my uniball cup there nice and round still. Doesn't end up being an oval. The interference on the fit on these is about 1/1000th, so it's a slip fit. And enough to see that if it goes in there sideways, it's got to go in there just right to drop in nice and straight. And that's what they're used for. So I've got a slug in each one of these. Did a root pass and then did a second double weave pass on the top of that. Just because I like the looks of them. That's why I do that. But that is the uniball cup welded on the end of a piece of tube. So on that end, we've got some 1 1/4. The tube is 1 3/4. I use 1 1/4 heims for the end of my beam. That way, the reason I like to use the heims versus uniball on the end, I've seen some uniball ends. That just means your beam is a set length. And when building this stuff, especially for me, I don't build on a frame table. I build on jack stands, on concrete. It's nice to have some adjustability when stuff doesn't come out perfect. If you're building on a fixture table, something like this, but a whole truck could be on it, and you have a grid and you can lay things out, makes sense that you can build stuff exactly to CAD. But the reality in this world is stuff comes out, 1/8 inch off, 1/4 inch off here, with welding and heat shrinking and all that type of different stuff going on. There's a lot of different things going on. So that's why I use a heim end on that end, because then it gives us some adjustability for setting these things up, a little bit on track width and yada yada, things like that. So there is 1 1/4 weld-in bungs on that end. Tube is cut to size. Those get welded in on that end, and the uniball cups get welded in on this end. For me, there is a specific degree. These particular beams are at 25 degrees here for this uniball cup, so I had to notch a 25-degree notch. And another thing, I don't use a notcher as a piece of equipment. I still like to notch things just with a cutoff wheel. I like a cutoff wheel and then a flap wheel to come in after and get my radius and kind of, I guess, finesse it. I'll take this uniball cup and just kind of some time with a flap wheel and go in there and till my clearance is what I want for my welding and make that uniball cup fit. So that's what I've done, and we're getting caught up to that point, and that's where we're at on these. So uniball cups on there, thanks to my uniball slug. And now we can move on to the next part of these, which is getting a piece of tube to weld on here like so. And then I use another 1 1/4 heim bung. So I use a uniball lower and I use a heim upper. We'll get into a little bit later on that, why I do that. But from what you can see, it'll end up looking something like that. So that is one of my beams fully welded out. My beams, I do use, it's 1 3/4, 120 wall tubing. So that heim, all the way to that uniball cup, is welded internally with that tube. And then there's plate sandwiching it that is also welded to the tube. And then there's a piece of tube here and a piece of tube here. With that, I actually got some plates over here. So I'm prepping the beam plates. This is my main plate, a front and a rear. I'm working on getting these prepped. As you can see, they've got some slits cut in them, and that is where the tube goes in there. So as that'll kind of be the next step. I got to make that upper tube that goes there, and then the gusset tube that supports it. I'll wind up with a tube-looking beam with no plates on it. That is the internal structure of how I build my beams. You may be asking, man, that makes kind of a heavy beam, doesn't it? Yes, it does. My beams are not going to say they're probably the lightest beam out there. I've seen several other beam designs that are probably significantly lighter than my beam. Another thing that I'll touch on here in this video is all of my stuff is steel. I use mild steel for all of my builds, all of my beams, and I know that's going to go way against what the internet fabbers will tell you. It has to be chromoly. You got to have chromoly. If you don't have chromoly, you're not cool. That's a fad that I'd really like to see go away. Not saying that chromoly is not the thing you should be using. There is definitely a use for chromoly, but for what I'm building and the product that I'm trying to deliver to customers, that's what I do on this channel. All of this stuff is for customers. I want to use mild steel, and the reason being is it's going to last longer. The chromoly stuff, there is a lot more, how do I put it? There's a lot more that just goes into it. Chromoly needs to be heat treated. If you're making stuff out of chromoly and not heat treating it, you're wasting your time. Chromoly is a lot more expensive to buy the material. You're putting all that money into something, and if you're not going to take it to the stages it needs, which is it needs to be heat treated, and it needs to be heat treated correctly. I've heard such things as, oh, well, when I weld it, it heat treats it. That is not true. That is a myth. The problem that I have with chromoly in building this stuff is I'm not building race trucks. I'm building make them last and have a lot of fun for this family for a very long time trucks. The problem with chromoly is lighter. So the reason you can use chromoly is you can get away with using thinner material. After it's heat treated, it has a higher shear strength than what mild steel does at the same thickness. For me, I'm not racing these trucks. I don't need that. I'm not looking for that advantage on a field. I'm not looking to be, okay, I'm showing up to a race and everyone's got beam trucks. My beam truck has to be better than the next guy's beam truck. It has to be lighter, faster, etc., etc. These trucks still go plenty good being mild steel. The thing where I'm saying it's a lot stronger than is, and I could do this with chromoly, it just comes down to the cost. I make stuff with mild steel, just thicker and bigger. So I have a full tube inner structure, and then it's a fully plated outer structure on my beams. We'll kind of look at this one here. So you can see my weld marks there where it's welded to the tube. The backside has that main plate. There's 3/16 upper and bottom plates. And then on the front, there's even an additional 3/16 overlap plate. This beam is pretty heavy and stout, and that's how I like it. This thing is going to be able to take a beating. It's going to last a very long time. And then the other big thing is every bolt surface, or bolt shoulder surface, wherever a bolt goes through, steering, knuckles, radius tabs, wherever, my minimum is 3/8. So every single shoulder is 3/8 thickness of 3/16 mild steel. That is what I use, even for swingers. It doesn't matter. Every single thing I do is 3/8. I see so many trucks that are single 3/16 plate steel. And the reality is that if you're really driving your truck and out there, you're going to get 5, maybe 6 seasons out of that stuff before that stuff's all ovaled out and needs weld washers, etc. But now the metal is fatigued. It's got stress. It's got cracks in it. There's a lot of other issues that come with that. So my philosophy here at Dune Heavy Machine, build it super strong, build it super stout the very first time, and then go have fun with this thing for a very long time. So, I don't know, anyway, I didn't really mean to get into a whole little spiel on chromoly versus mild steel, but it is something I see come up quite a bit. I get asked about quite a bit. So I figured I'd just put kind of my little spiel out there on it. I don't heat treat because this is obviously all mild steel stuff. It makes welding all this stuff to frames much easier. I see people building chromoly stuff and then welding it to like an OEM steel frame. That literally is just going to crack. It's going to crack right next to the weld because of the different tooling temperatures. There's probably I should probably make a video, a full separate video on just steel versus chromoly and why and when you should be using that stuff. If you're in the racing world, I've seen a lot of chromoly stuff. It's funny, go to a race, start looking around on chromoly built vehicles, and you will see crazy amounts, and maybe this is old. I don't know about today. I haven't been to a race in probably 5 or 6 years. But 5 or 6 years ago, I was crawling all over people's race rigs that were made out of chromoly, and they were cracked and repaired everywhere. Welds, specifically, I was looking at it would have been, I don't remember what class, it was like a buggy. They had some fabricated uprights. I started talking with the team, and they were ripping the spindles off. They were getting ready to weld them. I was just like, what are you welding those for? Oh, we have to rip these off and weld these things every single race time we go out. And I was like, what? Why? That makes no sense. Well, because it's chromoly and it cracks. The beading we're putting on these things, it blew my mind. I was like, that seems like the dumbest thing ever to me. But, I mean, a lot of stuff in off-road is dumb. So that is where I get, I guess my experience comes from. I've been around racing. I've been doing this long enough. My experience, there's so much time, effort, and money put into this stuff. I want to see this stuff last the customers a very long time. So, back to the beam construction. That gets you a pretty stout, heavy beam. Now, the benefit, I am a shock tuner here as well. So, yes, there are, when it's unsprung weight, that's a big thing you'll see. Oh, we want, the least amount of unsprung weight as possible. Sure, you do, but it's not the be-all, end-all. I can still make this truck rip through the dunes and tune this thing how it needs to be with a little bit heavier beam on it, and that is perfectly okay for me. So anyways, that is a little bit of a spiel about chromoly versus mild steel. Gonna get into prepping the rest of my beams now. I cut all my beams on a plasma table. So because of that, let's see here. I've already cleaned those edges, so maybe these ones. You end up getting a mill scale edge. Let's see if we can get that camera to focus. If you see that edge, that is gray mill scale from the it's oxidized steel. That is from the plasma cutter. So if you look at this has all been touched up with a flap wheel. So every single piece of metal that I make here, I cut everything out on my plasma table over here. It all comes off the plasma table, and then it comes over to my little prep station. My prep station includes just a handheld grinder. I'll throw a flap wheel on that, and then flap wheel the edges. For these slots, I use a cutoff wheel. I'll go in there with a cutoff wheel and grind the tops and bottoms and get the mill scale even off of those. It has to come off of everything. If you do not get that mill scale off and you go to TIG weld, you could get away with a MIG welder. I'll see people MIG weld through that stuff all day. Doesn't help the impurities. They'll bubble up and they'll come out. But for TIG welding, it will absolutely destroy your weld. You'll get porosity, sometimes just from contaminant. So it has to be clean. So that's the first step, cleaning all the edges. And then I'll come in with a flap wheel, not a flap wheel, an orbital and a sanding disc. And then the faces get sanded. So that is the process I'm working on right now. I've gotten one set done. I need to do the top and bottom plates and then the other set of beams there. So not sure how much film and stuff I'm going to do as far as the GoPro time-lapse stuff. It gets pretty boring. Takes quite a while. I just kind of sit there, get to work, put some headphones in. I like to wear a respirator too because my shop's pretty small and you just get grinding. You can already see there's grinding dust and debris all over my shop floor right here from getting this stuff started and prepped. But that is what we are working on today in this video, is seeing if we can get the main structures, the two portions of the beams all laid out, and then start setting up the beam plates, the front and backs, and yeah, start welding out another set of beams, and then just kind of show you a little bit more my processes of how I make these things and get to the point of installing them and making them look like that. Working on getting these inner tube structures for these beams done. I've gotten this upper tube for this Heim here, and kind of ran across a few more things that I wanted to add in this video as far as kind of some fabrication tech on some different things that I use and kind of how I set them up. The first being uniball cups and the direction of them. These are directional. If you notice, there is a machined lip up in there, and the uniball will actually slide up and rest into that cup. And then you'll see there's a groove in the other side, and you put a snap ring in there once that uniball's in. So that's what it looks like with the uniball installed in there. Another handy little tool that I have, this is from Harbor Freight. This comes in a whole kit of different sized ones. One of them, you can wrap sandpaper around this thing. And after I weld them, I always run that thing on the inside, just kind of, just in case if there's any little slight bit of warping or oxidation in there. It's just to clean that thing all back up, and it really just kind of polishes it. So that thing is nifty. Run that in there, and then I'll never seize the uniball cup and then press in the uniball. For setting these up, you can see this is the top side. So that is this side in here. The lip is up there, and the C-clip is down there. The reason being is you'll have a tire eventually on the knuckle here, and then you have your beam here. All of your force from the vehicle weight, when you say jump this thing, or if it's just sitting in a parking lot or whatever, but say you jump it, and so the whole vehicle's off the ground, tire's off the ground. When you land, you have force coming into the tire this way. So that is trying to shove this knuckle this way. Then you have a shock that will be bolted somewhere up in this range, and that is what's holding the vehicle up. All of that vehicle weight is shoving force this way, trying to push that beam down into the ground. So in doing that, that uniball rides in there. That tire is pushing this knuckle down, and this beam has force pushing it up. If you had that C-clip on the upper side, you would be constantly having force pounding into that C-clip versus into the machine lip. Not as crucial on this setup. I want to try it, but you probably could get away with it not being a problem on using this one, because this knuckle doesn't actually move. This is taking some of the force as well on that tire. So with that setup, but if you had like an upper A-arm where you see like a uniball cup out for the upper spindle, that would be something. If you're welding something like that in, make sure you get your orientation right on those. As far as where I'm at on this beam, I've gotten this first one done and notched, and so now the other tube that I was talking about earlier, it gets made. It kind of goes in here on an angle like so. It'll get notched on the top and bottom, and this will all get welded up then, and then those overlays will get sandwiched on there over like that, and then start welded up. It is a long, lengthy process with lots of different steps. I can only put so much in these videos. Today, I think I'm going to conclude it there. I'm going to keep working on this stuff. But thank you for watching my channel. If you keep coming and watching all this stuff, I'm trying to hold myself a little more accountable to putting out weekly videos. Really, no matter what, just trying to be more consistent at it. Keeps me accountable on projects I'm working on. But it also helps me with my YouTube stuff. My YouTube page, I have recently gotten it monetized. And the biggest thing that helps it is for me to constantly be consistent. The more consistent I am, the better the channel does. And I feel like I said, accountability holds me a little more accountable to staying up on this stuff, updating where projects are at. A lot of stuff, I think for me, I'm a little jaded. I've been doing this stuff so long. I just take a lot of this stuff for granted. And I'll get messages or comments, YouTube comments or social media messages. There's different people I talk to that are out trying to build these things. That's what these videos are for the guys in the garage, maybe trying to figure this out, trying to take this on and tackle it. The other thing that my videos do is gives my customers like updates where their vehicles are at, and gets to behind the scenes look a little bit what goes into building their stuff that is going on these vehicles. So again, thank you for coming to my channel, checking out my stuff. I appreciate it. We'll catch you next time. Peace.